It's normal for an NFL player to endure all-time highs and lows throughout their career, but has any player ever seen the extremes of each like Russell Wilson has? That is unfortunately what happens when you go from being a Super Bowl winner on track for Canton to the man labeled as the worst trade in NFL history. In full honesty, it is quite a fall from grace and a blemish on the resume that will be extremely hard to shake. But in true Russell Wilson fashion, the resurrection appears to be happening now in 2024. This is a man you should never count out, and this is his story of how he has fully resurrected his career in 2024. Russell Wilson grew up in Richmond, Virginia, raised by his mother, Tammy, and his father, Harrison, a dual sport athlete who would inspire his son to go down a similar path. At collegiate high school, Wilson kept himself busy on the basketball, baseball, and football teams, but it was football where he really shined the brightest. A productive high school career saw him rack up numbers and win several awards, but he didn't get the attention to match all of that, only earning a 2-star recruitment rating as he was deemed to be too small to be successful. At 5'11" and 205 pounds, Wilson was considerably smaller than what most would consider prototypical quarterback size. And due to that, he paid the price with no flurry of offers from collegiate programs, with only NC State and Duke stepping up with offers. And as crazy as it sounds too, when he was being approached by some other schools, although they didn't offer him, they were asking him to actually become a defensive back. But the reason he ended up going to NC State is because they reassured him and told him that he was going to be a quarterback for sure. After redshirting as a freshman, Wilson started the 2008 season in rotation with 2 other NC State quarterbacks. And it didn't take too long for him to separate himself from a talent perspective, though with him having a firm grip on the starting role by week 6. Wilson completed 54.5% of his passes for 1,955 yards, 17 touchdowns, and just 1 interception in his first year as a starter, and he continued building momentum into year 2, with 12 more touchdowns and 0 interceptions through the first 4 games of the season, taking NC State to a 3-1 record. In doing so, he set a new NCAA record of 325 consecutive pass attempts without an interception, which extended all the way to 379 before ending the streak against Wake Forest. That season would also be Russell Wilson's first with over 3,000 passing yards, a feat he achieved once again in 2010, completing 58% of his passes for 3,563 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. In doing so, Wilson led NC State to a 9-4 record while also leading the ACC in passing yards per game and total offensive yards per game. For his efforts, he was named second-team All-ACC and runner-up for the ACC Football Player of the Year award, but those achievements could not prevent the year from ending with controversy. You see, following the conclusion of the 2010 season, Russell Wilson was drafted by the Colorado Rockies in the 4th round of the 2010 MLB draft. Much to the frustration of his NC State college coach, Russell Wilson joined the Rockies for spring training. And yes, while he was on the Rockies and it was a little bit challenging for him to try and make that transition from football to the baseball field despite having played in high school, it really helped him realize that really his first passion of football, what was going to carry him to the pros, and which is why he returned back to NC State. But when he went back to try and go get back on the football team, that was when his own head coach called him undersized and said that he would be better if he just stuck with baseball.
The summer before my senior year of college, I'm playing minor league baseball. I called my football coach at NC State and say, "Hey coach, I'd like to come back for my senior year." And he told me I wasn't coming back. He said, "Listen, son, you're never going to play in the National Football League. You're too small. There's no chance. You got no shot. Give it up." Of course, I'm on this side of the phone saying, "So you're telling me I'm not going to come back to NC State? I won't see the field?" He said, "No, son, you won't see the field."
And in doing so, it kind of gave Russell Wilson more motivation to go out there and prove him wrong, which is why he transferred to Wisconsin to go play his final year there. And truly, it clearly paid off as his final season of college football, Wilson completed 72.8% of his passes for 3,175 yards, 33 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions, earning a passer rating of 191.8. He led the Badgers to an 11-3 record, including a stunning 3-touchdown outing against Michigan State to land the Big Ten championship. His reward was being named to the first team All-Big Ten team and awarded the Big Ten Quarterback of the Year award, giving him the perfect send-off to the NFL draft. The only problem, though, was that he hadn't grown at all through his college years. In fact, he measured actually shorter at the combine at a shade of under 5'11 inches. And while this undoubtedly hurt his chances of going in day 1, Wilson didn't have to wait long, as many people thought he would hear his name get called very soon.
With the 75th pick in the 2012 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Russell Wilson, quarterback, Wisconsin.
At the time of the selection, Wilson was viewed as a little more than a developmental project, with analysts expecting him to slot in behind the team's new free agent signings, Matt Flynn and Tavares Jackson. However, Russell Wilson actually impressed everybody so much that he was named the team starter for the first game of the regular season. Unfortunately, he got off to a losing start, but he only had to wait one more week to get his first win under his belt. Against the Dallas Cowboys in week 2 of the 2012 season, Wilson completed 75% of his passes for 151 yards and a touchdown, easing the Seahawks to a 27-7 victory. Victory number 2 came 1 week later, and this time he threw 2 touchdowns, including the very controversial Fail Mary, which quickly became one of the wildest plays in NFL history.
The game's final play is a Wilson lob to the end zone, which is fought for by Tate with Jennings simultaneous. Who has it? Who they give it to? Touchdown!
And by now, it was clear that the Seahawks had found a good one in the 3rd round, with Wilson not just playing good football for a rookie, but playing good football in general. He closed out the year with 3,118 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, while also tacking on another 489 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. And what was even more important than that, though, was the fact that he led the team to 11 wins, good enough for 2nd place in the division and a playoff berth. And now, yes, in that playoff run, they did eventually lose to the Falcons, who did go to play in the Super Bowl that year, but there was clearly still plenty to be excited about as they had found their guy in Seattle. They had a legit quarterback under center, the Legion of Boom on defense, and then when you add in Marshawn Lynch to hand the ball off to, that team was one of the best teams ever put together. Seattle had all the pieces they needed heading into the 2013 season, and Russell Wilson played his part perfectly. He passed for 3,375 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, while also increasing his rushing tally to 539 yards. He was named to the Pro Bowl for the 2nd year running, which is a great achievement for a sophomore quarterback, but the goals and expectations had already risen considerably. And don't get me wrong, all these individual accolades and prizes are amazing, but the team had their eyes on something much bigger that year. Across that 2013 campaign, Seattle improved to a 13-3 record, which won the team the NFC West and gifted them a 1st round bye in the playoffs. And then, as we all know, Marshawn Lynch then ran all over the Saints in the divisional round to set up an NFC Championship clash against their bitter NFC West rivals, the San Francisco 49ers. Wilson completed 64% of his passes for 215 yards and a touchdown on the day, proving that he had the clutch tendencies needed to be a top quarterback. And on 4th and 7 in the 4th quarter, Pete Carroll would put the ball in the hands of his biggest playmaker at quarterback.
Flag is thrown. It's a free play. Into the end zone. The pass. Caught for the touchdown. Curse.
This play came with the game on the line, and it gave Seattle a lead that they never gave up as a sophomore Russell Wilson was going to the Super Bowl. Seattle would be facing off against one of the greatest offenses of all time in the Denver Broncos, led by Peyton Manning, and they were an absolute force to be reckoned with. And despite Seattle having an equally intimidating defense, they were actually considered heavy underdogs, largely due to Russell Wilson being perceived as a massively inferior option at quarterback in comparison to the future Hall of Famer Peyton Manning. What followed, though, was one of the most one-sided Super Bowls in NFL history. Wilson's 206 yards and 2 touchdowns led Seattle to 43 points of their own, winning Seattle their first ever Super Bowl. It was an incredible achievement by an incredible team, but more importantly, Russell Wilson had proven the doubters wrong. He had proven that his height wasn't an issue and that his 5'11" frame would not stop him from winning the biggest prize. And with Wilson proving the doubters wrong at quarterback, Marshawn Lynch terrorizing defenses as running back, and the Legion of Boom making a case as one of the greatest defensive units ever, Seattle was one of the scariest teams to play in the future. And the way they showed this was by posting a 12-4 record and storming all the way back to the Super Bowl. And while in doing so, Russell Wilson posted another 3,475 yards and 20 touchdowns as a passer, proving that he could take his game to the next level, also including 849 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. And coming into this Super Bowl, everybody, or pretty much all anybody could talk about, was if the Seattle Seahawks would be able to repeat as Super Bowl champions. And early in Super Bowl 49, the Seahawks were enjoying a 10-point lead going into the 3rd quarter. And as many people had come to expect from Tom Brady, though, the story was far from over, and 2 touchdowns gave New England a 4-point lead late in the 4th quarter. Incredibly, with 2 minutes left on the clock, Russell Wilson managed to march the Seahawks all the way down the field to the New England 1-yard line, helped by 2 completions of 30 yards. And from there, one of the craziest and most questionable play calls of all time in Super Bowl history would take place.
2nd and goal.
Baldwin sets up on the left. Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
Instead of embarking on what appeared to be another great NFL dynasty, Seattle had to leave as losers, and the consequences were severe. While they never quite deteriorated to producing a losing season going forward, the locker room never was the same after that moment. In the years that followed, Russell Wilson's play did remain at a high level, and he was rewarded with a mega contract worth $87.6 million in 2015. However, the downside of when you pay a quarterback that type of money is trying to manage the rest of the roster around him with such little money that you have left over. But despite that, Russell Wilson still rewarded the Seahawks' faith in him by passing for over 4,000 yards in each of the next 2 seasons, continuing to perform at a very high level. There were no triumphant returns to the big game though, and devastating playoff losses became an unfortunate trend. Eventually in 2021 though, things would take an even bigger turn for the worse.
News on CBS Sports HQ, Jets All-Pro defensive back, former Jets All-Pro defensive back Jamal Adams has been traded to the Seattle Seahawks.
He posted a video of himself with sunglasses on, big old cigar, playing a little dominoes. It reminded me of an Earl Thomas situation, which is interesting because the Seahawks haven't had a real guy back there as a safety since Earl Thomas was there, and everybody knows the Earl Thomas ended bad. Will Jamal Adams in Seattle end bad?
Unfortunately, injuries and bad play meant that they were never going to return to the glory days of the Legion of Boom, leaving the Seahawks with an even worse roster and minimal draft capital to repair it. The 2021 campaign coincided with Wilson posting a career-low 3,113 yards, leading to a disappointing 7-10 record. And in doing so, it was a time for change.
Russell Wilson has been traded to the Denver Broncos.
Here's the trade. Drew Lock, Noah Fant, the tight end, and Shelby Harris, the defensive lineman, plus 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a 5th for Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick.
Daniel Hackett gets a new quarterback in Denver. The Broncos get a new QB. Is Drew Lock going to be the starter for the Seattle Seahawks?
Denver doesn't need draft picks. Denver's ready to win a Super Bowl. Denver's got excellent running backs, a star tight end, 4 receivers, a great left tackle, elite corners.
The Broncos had been looking for an answer at quarterback ever since Peyton Manning had left 7 years earlier, and they paid Russell Wilson $242 million to be that guy. At that time and moment too, Denver had one of the better defenses in the league, and they really thought that Russell Wilson was going to be that guy that could take their team to the next level that they did want to get to. Hopefully using his playoff experience to help them reach the playoffs, something that they hadn't done since 2015. Not only was the pressure on for Russell Wilson to have just success in Denver, but also because if he had a successful stint while with the Broncos, he would basically be a surefire lock for the Hall of Fame. And as we all know though, unfortunately, things got off to a disastrous start. New head coach Nathaniel Hackett not even lasting 1 year, and Russell Wilson not being able to make up for the chaos, leading to the Broncos enduring a horrendous 5-12 record in a last place finish in the AFC West. Hackett did take most of the blame and lost his job as a result, but Wilson did little to help, completing 60% of his passes for 3,524 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Sean Payton was brought in to salvage a dire situation, but it was clear early on that he was never going to mesh well with his expensive quarterback. And don't get me wrong, while Russell Wilson's touchdown tally did improve to 26 and he looked after the ball much better, 3,070 yards was reflective of a situation which Payton spent much of the year trying to hide his starting quarterback though. He took that even further by benching Russell Wilson for the final 2 games of the season in order to protect his team from having to potentially pay his $37 million injury guarantee in 2024. Denver did fall to another losing record during that 2023 campaign, and it appeared pretty much that all the writing was on the wall. Sean Payton was not scared to tell people what he thought, and it was very clear that he didn't want Russell Wilson as his starting quarterback moving forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is a new member of the free agency list that we could have never expected. In a historic move with the biggest dead cap hit to an NFL team in the history of the NFL, they have cut Russell Wilson, future, people say, Hall of Fame quarterback. Super Bowl champion from the Seattle Seahawks. Massive investment by the Walton family whenever they bought the Denver Broncos to be the future of the Denver Broncos. And here we sit 1 year into Sean Payton's regime as the actual future of the Denver Broncos with no franchise quarterback and Russell Wilson able to take a gig somewhere else for league minimum while still making like $39 million from the Denver Broncos.
And with the Broncos releasing Russell Wilson, that gave the confirmation that the trade for him was a complete blunder and now put them in cap space hell, as now they would owe $84 and $85 million over the next 2 years to pay him. But not only did that suck for the Broncos, but also for Russell Wilson, because that put a massive dent in his Hall of Fame candidacy. Like, I mean, honestly, can you be considered one of the sport's greatest players with having such a huge dent on your resume as being included in one of the worst trades, if not the worst trade of all time in NFL history? Like, I mean, it was incredible. Russell Wilson was once viewed as a savior and Super Bowl champion and was now resigned to being a laughingstock in NFL circles. And I mean, honestly, the mess of his tenure in Denver led to many to believe that his time in the NFL was completely done.
Breaking news on a late Sunday night. 9-time Pro Bowler, former Super Bowl champion Russell Wilson planning to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Now, do I think it's good that Russ has Yinzers getting his back on the internet if any of that shit-talking situation takes place again that was happening on Russ? Yes. If Russ plays well, these Yinzers will go to bat for this guy for the rest of his life, which I think is a good thing for Russ. If he plays terrible, these Yinzers are going to get real loud and obnoxious. Probably the worst that he's ever heard, if I had to guess.
But just like in his glory days in Seattle and the theoretical scenario he faced in Denver, Wilson was headed to a team with an elite defense and somewhat enticing players on offense. And I mean, honestly, it was the exact same situation with the Broncos, only without the eye-watering price tag. I mean, as we all know, the 2024 Steelers needed competence at the quarterback position after Kenny Pickett had failed to adequately replace the great Big Ben Roethlisberger. And I mean, all signs did point to Russell Wilson being that guy, but then Pittsburgh turned around and shocked everyone in the offseason.
Adam Schefter reporting that the Bears are trading the former 11th overall pick to the Steelers in exchange for a conditional 6th-round pick in next year's draft. But Fields will not compete for the starting job. That position in Pittsburgh belongs to Russell Wilson.
It got only crazier as an injury to Wilson prior to the season gave Justin Fields the starting role in week 1 of the regular season, which many believed was a position he would never give up. And on top of that too, things certainly seemed to be heading in that direction, with Fields playing somewhat of the best football of his career and leading the team to a 4-2 record. With everything going so well, nobody expected a change to be on the cards, but Mike Tomlin surprised everyone yet again, announcing that Russell Wilson would be taking over for Justin Fields in week 7 of the 2024 season. Tomlin was quoted and said that it was really important to not confuse good with great, and that he was shooting for the upside with his veteran quarterback. In Russell Wilson's first 4 games as a starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024, he has passed for 942 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And now, yes, the Steelers do remain a run-first oriented team, but Russell Wilson's ability to throw the ball deep and kind of just drop it in the bucket has unlocked a new element for this offense. He's completely unleashed third-year receiver George Pickens, helping Pittsburgh win all 4 games he has started, including the one against the division rival Baltimore Ravens, giving the Steelers a narrow buffer at the top of the division. And yes, we know they did lose last night on Thursday night, but if they can continue to win, they are a surefire lock for the playoffs. And now, obviously, there is a long way to go, but Russell Wilson is clearly thriving in Pittsburgh, and he has a team around him that could be capable of going all the way. And I mean, honestly, this could be the late career stint that can solidify his status as a Hall of Fame quarterback. As his time in Denver was meant to be, he can now do it in Pittsburgh. And if you want to see the secret of why the Detroit Lions have been so successful this season, then click this video right here.